And I'm looking to bring on stage the next performer. I don't want to take no sort of time. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hand together? No stranger in the house. 1986. Triple Crown winner. The man who gave us Bacchanal time. Rally around the West Indies. Hinds'Sight. And this year what he tell us? I say go down. I am moving. Would you please? Calypso music. Aristocrat posse. Put your hand together. Let's welcome David, Michael, Rada. David Rada. David Rada. Good night.
Can you hear a distant drum bouncing on the laughter of a melody? What?
Yeah, yeah.
Does the rhythm tell you come, 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 come? Does your spirit do a dance to this symphony? What?
Yeah, yeah.
Does it tell you that your heart is a fire?
Oh yeah.
Does it tell you that your pain is a liar?
Oh yeah.
Does it wash away all the unlovely? Well, are you ready for a brand new discovery? Everybody sing, sing. Calypso, Calypso, Calypso music. Yeah, yeah. Calypso, Calypso, yeah, yeah, yeah. Calypso, the rhythm make you feel alright. We gonna jam it through the night. We singing, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Can I have a Monday? Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. I say that I am the seed of the growling tiger now. I got to sing, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Well, yeah. Oh! It is a living vibration rooted deep within my Caribbean belly. Lyrics to make a politician cringe or turn a woman's body into jelly. I tell you, shake it, mama, yeah. Sweet soca music, Calypso, well, you could have never refused it. Calypso, no, no. Let it shake like a shango, Calypso. Why the hell you shaking? You don't know. Calypso. Everybody sing, Calypso, Calypso, Calypso music. Oh, buddy, oh, buddy. Calypso, oh, buddy. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Oh, oh, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Well, I said that I am the seed of this pile. I was born. I want to come on. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Oh yeah. Oh, ba de be be be. Oh ba memories now. I can still hear lion roar to Greenwich village. Executor kills them dead at the ribbon blue. Yes. Lord Invader conquers Berlin, but their hearts this time. Lord Kitchener making old London feel so new. Lord Beginner and Karatu, Fitzroy Coleman fingers dancing on the breath. And when you think that it's true, he has said nothing yet. Carnegie Hall, graced by the presence of Sparrow. Oh, oh, oh. And when Sparrow done with the tail, yeah, them shouting, don't go, Sparrow, don't go. Why? You're damn right. I say you're damn right. I say you're damn right. You're damn right. Damn right. Damn right. Oh, you're damn right. Rhythm make them feel alright. We gon' jam it through the night. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Calypso. Oh calypso. I said that I am to see that this spider, a spider says, I want to fall. Oh yeah. Caribbean people, we got the rise. We got the rise. From the time the first bamboo cut, and we drag it down from up in them St. Anne's Hills. Oh, you hear me? You hear me? From the day the first shot will leave the band. The regiment start to look tonight. We jamming, and we jamming it still. Creating a rhythm that could be deadly like Headley. But only this time, it's the lyric and the melody we're sending the soul to the boundary. Yeah. From the bongo drum to the roll of the tassa. You never since Europe come and she make bassa. We jamming in the calypso, calypso, calypso music. Calypso, calypso, yeah. Calypso, the rhythm make you feel alright. We gonna jam it through the night. Oh yeah, calypso. Oh yeah, calypso. We singing, oh yeah, calypso. We singing, oh yeah, calypso. Oh yeah. All right. Now the thing start. This is no longer whatever they call this thing. This is now the Holy Temple of Soca. Reverend in attendance here, beloved. We are gathered here tonight for one thing and one thing only. That is to get out the hand. Say it. We come here to get out the hand. Say it. We come here to say it. We come out to get out the hand. Everybody clap your hand. Everybody clap your hand. Everybody clap your hands. Yeah. Everybody clap your hands now. Everybody say yeah. Oh. Say yeah. Oh. Say oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You see the sweet guys of music. They could have never refuse it. The sweet guys of music. They could have never refuse it. 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 Never. Make it shake like a shango. Why the hell you shake if you don't know? It does make you shake like a shango. Ojo robo miara, o signa de. Ojo robo miara, o signa de. Congo de ajaja ho, erile ajaja ho, erile ajaja ho, erile ajaja ho, erile. I feel so nice now. Oh, I feel so nice now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is a living vibration, rooted deep within my Caribbean belly. Lyrics to make a politician Christian. turn a woman body into jelly. Oh yeah. Sweet soca music, never refuse it.
Oh yeah.
Shake like a shango.
Oh yeah.
Why the hell you shake if you don't know? Hey, hey, calypso, calypso, calypso music. Yeah, yeah. Calypso, calypso, yeah. Oh, calypso, you rhythm make you feel alright. We gonna jam it through the night. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, calypso. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, calypso. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, calypso. Hey, hey. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Royalty. David Michael Rudder, Calypso music, one of a kind. One of a kind. They don't make them like that anymore, as Lord Pretender would say. Calypso music. Why you shaking, you don't know. Music to make a politician cringe or turn a woman body into jelly. Don't you love that? Vincent, to make a woman dance. Say to turn a woman body into jelly. Music to make a politician cringe. I say music to criticize a politician. Music to make a politician cringe. That is why the Calypsonian is a poet. A poet. I love being Caribbean whenever the day is not going well, whenever the times are difficult. We turn to our griots, those who shape our experiences, and give them back to us as political and cultural nourishment that we can see through to the other side. Good evening to you. Good evening to the wonderful people of Linden. Good evening to all of you. Wisma Mackenzie, Christianberg. Good evening to good evening to all of you. Welcome to tonight's edition of Politics 101. Good evening to the people of Ithaca. Often we don't always remember our brothers and sisters down there in Ithaca, one of the centers of the culture. One of the centers of the culture. And I know Ithaca is watching. Good evening to my brother Ivor out there in Tucker, Georgia, in the deep south. The deep south. Good evening to all of you who have taken the time out to join us tonight. Brother Vincent Alexander is here. And we are going to be talking about the recent development at GECOM. I have never seen anything like I'm seeing at GECOM. And I've been in this political thing for long. I have never seen the kind of open barefacedness that you're seeing at GECOM. I ask myself, where is this coming from? I mean, politicians of all stripes, they usually look around before they do certain things. Good evening to you, my brother Thomas Robertson, down there in Atlanta, Georgia, the Deep South. Say hello to the family for me. Sister Mary Figuera. Mary, good night, good evening to you. Good evening to you, Vibert. Vibert, you owe me a drink. You've not done your duties in about 2 years, which means you haven't come to Buxton in 2 years. Good evening to you, Marlon Thomas. Good evening to you, Sheena Hazel. Donna Liverpool. Donna, I think, is joining us from French Guyana or Paramaribo, one of the two. I get confused sometimes where she's joining us from. Good evening, Francine. Francine. Good evening, Audrey Garraway. Had the pleasure of meeting your sister last year, who I had known before in very strange circumstances. Well, not strange, but let me say, in circumstances that one day I'm going to reveal, because it says something about our people. Because often we think that our people do not have what it takes to stand up. Yes, Donna, French Guyana. So I got it right the first time. Good evening, Brent, mentor. Welcome to Politics 101. We'll be talking to Vincent tonight, Jomo and Nkrumah. Good evening, my brother. Good evening, my brother. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to all the Buxtonians who are on tonight. Good evening to you. Good night. Good night to those of you who are joining us from Europe, the United Kingdom, France. Good night to you. Those of you who are joining us from the motherland, I know some people are joining us from Ghana, Johannesburg. Good night. Good morning, I think, to you out there in the motherland. Welcome to Politics 101. We're going to be talking with Vincent Alexander. Let me bring in Vincent and let's start the conversation. Vincent, I think your video, there you go. There you go. Good evening, Vincent.
Good evening. Forgive the quality here. I'm in blackout and using a standby arrangement.
Standby arrangement. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Vincent, you know, I was tuned in last night to a particular show and learned that you were supposed to be on the show last night, and you decided not to go on the show, and the organizer of the show made a big deal about it, and I wasn't certain because I don't like to take secondhand information from the organizers of that show. So if you don't mind, good evening to you, my brother from Gros Ile, down there in St. Lucia, from Green Bay in Antigua. Oh, the entire Caribbean is out tonight. Gros Ile is one of my favorite places on earth. On earth. When you land in St. Lucia on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, you put your things down and you head down to Gros Ile, because that's where it's happening. Good evening, Gregory. Vincent, yes. That show that you canceled last night. What's the reason? What was the reason? Yeah, are you hearing me, Vincent?
I am hearing you now.
Yes, go ahead.
I wasn't hearing you for a while, but I hear you now.
Yeah. I was asking about
I didn't hear the question actually.
I was asking about that show you canceled last night.
Yes, certainly I canceled the show. I was on the show a week or so ago. The issue of your comments was front and center of what they sought to interrogate. I explained in the context of the theory of trauma how you could have arrived at the naming of those people in the way in which you did. And I also explained that their behavior may have been the result of trauma. And I also even said that you yourself might have been traumatized by their behavior.
Yeah, bear with
Back
us.
on the set,
Yes.
to along with Ravi Dev and subsequently along with Bon. In inviting me, Mr. Kisoon indicated how many persons had in fact witnessed the show and that was good reason why we should continue. That information caused me to do a check on the when I did that check, I went through scores of comments, and all of the comments were derogatory remarks, none of which addressed the issue which I had addressed, but all of them came on calling me riggers, I should be dead, I'm old and decrepit, and things like that. And I decided that I would not give an opportunity for persons to come at me that way on another occasion, particularly in the circumstance where I couldn't respond to them. And so I declined the offer to continue on that show because of that environment. I didn't see any reason why I should subject myself to that kind of environment. Now, Mr. Kisoon felt, well, it's par for the course for people to say all of these things. Well, it may be par for the course for him. But I am not going to make myself fodder for people who are not prepared to engage in things substantive and who have predispositions, naysayers and haters coming on to
Yes. Yes, Vincent. I'm so glad.
in that
that you,
circumstance I refuse to appear on the show.
and I'm so glad you did. Recently, I have had cause. One of my daughters, who monitors those shows, it seems, and she drew my attention. She told me to go and raise some of those comments, and I was floored by the comments on those shows by PPP supporters. I hope that our supporters do not get down to that level. And I had cause to look, when I go through comments on my show, and I went through comments on other show, and they didn't come near, not even near, to the kind of comments that they make against those of us who are Africans and African people in general on those shows. And I feel the same way as you, as you do. It's very stinking. And to think that you have people in government and the ERC which as soon as some little thing come out of my mouth or people on the opposition side are quick to say they're investigating. Let them go on those shows and read what is written there about us and about African people in general. My skin crawl because I refuse to believe that Guyanese can descend so low in terms of how they feel about each other. So I was very, very glad that you took that position. Vincent, let's get quickly and talk about what we want to talk about tonight. When you were here last week, you hinted that the legal advisor to GECOM may be in trouble as far as the renewal of his contract is concerned. You told us that the chairperson had given him a high passing grade, and that after his submissions to the court, that was noted by the Chief Justice in our ruling, that the chairperson seemed to have had second thoughts and that she had postponed our decision on whether to renew his contract. And I said the chairperson because you reported to us that the three commissioners on the PPP side were up in arms against him and wanted his contract not to be renewed. And that the three nominated by the opposition had a different view. And so, again, it was done to the vote of the chairperson. And lo and behold, on Tuesday, you all went to the meeting and she ruled against the renewal of the contract of the legal advisor. Give us again the background. Give us again the background to this development, and then tell us what eventually transpired on Tuesday.
Well, this development had to do with a case which was filed by Carol Joseph, the chief scrutineer of the APNU, AFC. She filed a case in which she claimed that the amendment to the law, which provided for persons not to be verified at their place of residence, but to simply claim an address, flied in the face of the requirements for the conduct of elections which were constituency based. Constituency local government elections, local government area elections, regional elections, and constituency elections at the national level. Her contention was, and I did give a lot of legal sources, that in those elections it's essential that it be verified that somebody actually lives there in order to be able to cast his or her vote, because the system is a representative system. And if you didn't verify somebody in fact lived there, they'd be casting a vote to influence an outcome in the circumstance where their influence could well negate the votes of the real citizens, and therefore fly in the face of the democracy, the intent for us to have a representative system. GECOM responded to that, and in GECOM's response, what is essential to note is that GECOM said, and I'm speaking here to the affidavit of the chairperson, that the issue being raised is correctable by virtue of claims and objections. So GECOM did not say that this thing is erroneous. They said, look, we don't agree with the proposition that there's need for a verification. at the time of registration, but that if people are wrongly listed, that this could be corrected through claims and objections. So in a sense, GECOM admitted that there is a need for people to be resident and that that residency could be determined by people who object, doing so at the time of claims and objections, and that would remedy the problem that Carol Vera was raising. So that was GECOM's written submission. It came to a time when there were to be oral submissions. Now, let's be clear that the written submission was signed off by the chairperson. For want of documentation right now, I'm not referring to the written submission of the CEO, but certainly the written submission of the chairperson is the one I'm referencing. When it came to the time for oral submissions, in my humble opinion, the legal officer did not deviate from what was in the written submission, but went on to contend that this process required a national list in some regards and a regional list. So what he and that in going through those claims and objections, there should be different lists. That was really what he argued orally and did not really deviate from the contention that there was need for claims and objections, but just argued the manner in which it could be conducted. And that manner required a separate list. The CEO came out firing that in fact he had not carried out the instructions of the CEO. I am contesting that because I'm saying that though he did not specify the need for a separate list, that what he said in the oral submissions did not in any way negate or fundamentally depart from what he said in the written submissions, which were signed by the chairperson. And what in fact he was just saying is concretizing the manner in which these claims and objections could be done and that they needed two lists. But once that became public, the CEO came out firing, indicating that he had in fact disobeyed instructions. And I don't know that one gets specific instructions in relation to oral submissions, because those are a large extent done on the floor of the court and are in fact responsive to the submissions, oral submissions of another. So he could not have gotten a specific directives in relation to the oral submissions. Suffice to say that his argument in relation to the case at large did not fundamentally or in essence deviate from his written submission. So that one has to ask the question, what really was the basis upon which the the CEO went viral claiming that this man had disobeyed his instructions? And what is of interest in this regard is that when the CEO went viral, when one goes back to check the sequence of events, one sees that the CEO's statement was first published on the Facebook page of the Attorney General, and it was published in its original form. That is to say, it was published bearing the letterhead and signature of the CEO. I question that because the protocols of GECOM are that the public relation officer is the one who distributes any statement and it's distributed on the letterhead of GECOM rather than the letterhead of the CEO. The public relations officer, subsequent, and that's critical to note, to the Facebook publication of the CEO's letterhead, published the same statement on the GECOM letterhead. And I'm saying all of that to say that there seemed to have been some connivance between the CEO and they were seeing was collusion between the Attorney General and the CEO, a collusion which sought to ensure that the position articulated by the Attorney General was the one that would prevail, and that the position articulated by GECOM itself through the legal officer would not prevail. And so we subsequently saw this chairperson of GECOM who had given the legal officer a glowing appraisal, coming back after the court matter to align herself with the statement of the CEO and to contend that what the legal officer did would place GECOM in jeopardy and was likely to have deleterious effects on GECOM into the future, as it may even affect the conduct of elections, because this CEO was a rogue person, not adhering to the directives of GECOM. My own disposition, a glowing report, and here was one incident. Even if what you were saying was right, one would think that this officer would be either warned or there would be a reduction of his contract by a year, but you found it necessary to terminate the contract in the face of a 3-year appraisal which says quite the opposite to what was now being said about him. And so that is the context in which this matter has unfolded. And that context has led me in today's meeting to do two things: to ask about the protocols of the issuance of releases and to have the thorough investigation as to how is it the CEO's release, which he, the CEO, said he only sent to the PRO, release. To note that the PRO said that she had nothing to do with sending that release on the CEO's letterhead to the Attorney General for him to have it on his. And so I've called for an investigation. Of course, the response of the chairperson is that she doesn't go to Facebook, so she doesn't know. And that's nonsense of a response. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the system and protocols and how things have eventuated, which needs to be investigated, because my contention is that what occurred brings into question the integrity of GECOM's communication and or the malintent of the person who would have sent it to the AG, and the connivance between the AG and the CEO, if in fact it is the CEO that sent it to the AG. That issue has not been properly addressed. All that the chairperson keeps saying is that she doesn't check for Facebook and therefore she doesn't know. and at one time said that she doesn't have the written ruling of the judge, and therefore she's in no position to proceed with the matter. But I left this matter on the table, asking for a thorough investigation, contending that when there are issues in GECOM like disappearance of ID cards, etc., that these matters are sent to the police for investigation, and the extent to which this one may in fact be a question of the integrity of GECOM's communication, which could be a very serious matter because our communication would involve eventually things like election results, etc. And if the integrity has been breached and we do not correct and redress that situation, then it further puts GECOM in jeopardy in terms of its readiness to conduct a free and fair election. And so that is where I have left this matter, questioning the occurrence and asking for a determination as to how that could have occurred. And that determination will then tell us how we need to deal with the situation. If there's somebody culpable for what had occurred, but certainly for me, the occurrence points to some connivance on the part of someone in GECOM, separate and apart from the fact that the content of that release distorts the reality, and that has further been perpetuated by GECOM itself, now releasing a press statement, trying to confront what we have said as commissioners on this matter by claiming that, in fact, the legal officer was in dereliction of duty and did not adhere to a directive. All of that is up in the air because I've gone on further. I've gone on further to request that we in GECOM do an analysis of GECOM's written presentation and an analysis of the legal officer's oral presentation to determine whether, in fact, the accusation leveled by the CEO and the accusation further perpetuated in the release is true, because my own contention is that though the articulation on the oral presentation may not have been the same articulation as that in the written presentation, that the articulation in the oral presentation did not depart fundamentally from the contentions in the written presentation.
Vincent, I want to take you to the Attorney General's comments. Have you had a chance to hear his comments, either in part or as a whole?
I did fleetingly hear his comments.
Yeah. Okay.
I will take guidance on this matter.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me move on to the other question. I am intrigued by the argument purportedly from the Madam Chair that the legal officer's submission to the court.
You need to go that over. You need to go it over.
Yeah, I am intrigued by the position of the chairperson to the effect that the legal officer's submission to the court, as it relates to the different lists for the different levels of election, that it could have upset the whole system at GECOM to the point of a postponement of the election. I am intrigued by that. And if you can dissect, or as they say these days in academics, can you unpack that for us?
I would put it this way.
Yeah.
If his proposition could upset the timetable for elections, it shows the extent to which what was the status quo is in defiance of what's required for the preparation for a free and fair election. And GECOM's concern should not be about a postponement of something that is wrong. It should be about correcting the wrong, even if it takes time, even if it takes time, so that we can have a free and fair election. So what we're seeing there is countenancing the wrong in the interests of delivering the election, when in fact, correcting the wrong should be what we should see as primary in the interest of delivering a free and fair election. That in itself is evidence of a form of connivance in terms of what will unfold or can unfold at elections that can be uh, quite opposite to the required freeness and fairness of the election.
Vincent, usually in my classes, when I get a brilliant answer or comment from one of my students, I usually say repeat. As they say at Wake House in Guyana, repeato. Just in case somebody would have dozed off, please repeat what you just said. Even if you don't say it in the same words, please repeat it.
All right, the chairman's contention is that what the legal officer suggested could have led to a delay in the delivery of elections.
Yes.
And my response to that is yes, probably it could have led, but that it could have led suggested that what we had to do in pursuit of what he proposed would have taken time, and that if we had not done it, we would be delivering an election that would not be conducive to the freeness and fairness of the election. And therefore, anyone who concedes that what he was proposing would have interfered with the timetable is conceding that he was proposing things that were going to change the process in a way as to provide for a free and fair election. And therefore, one should not make time supreme to the freeness and fairness of the election.
Thank you very much, Vincent Alexander. Vincent, I want you to address something that has been bothering me, and that is this argument that I'm hearing about a lawyer has to obey his client. And I suppose a lawyer is representing his client, but a lawyer is also an officer of the court, as the Chief Justice would have observed. Is there a balance between representation, representing a client, and respecting the norms of the courts, respecting the integrity of the court? Is there a balance? And if there is a balance, what is that balance from your perspective?
I think in the first instance, the balance has to be between morality and legality. And this is a big issue in jurisprudence, that very often some laws deviate from morality, but are an imposition of what may be considered to be immoral but legal. So that's the first point I want to make. It raises the question of the relationship between morality and legality, and it's something that's debated in the context of natural law. It's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that the question you've raised, in my humble opinion, is not a very relevant question in this circumstance, because, as I have suggested, there is no evidence to show that this lawyer fundamentally departed from the directives of his boss. So that's the next point I want to make. But the third point I want to make, which in some regards is related to the first point, is the lawyer GECOM, in responding to a matter of this sort, should not simply take the position that it has to oppose what has been brought before it in the case. The GECOM has to, in pursuit of his mandate, do what is right, even if it means agreeing with the matter brought in the court. And here is where the difficulty arises, because the lawyers certainly, who did not agree in absolute terms with the matter that was brought, did not agree in absolute terms, in keeping with the affidavits that were offered by the chairperson. He did not accede to this whole question of verification. He went along with the issue of a claim of address, but said that the problem caused by the claim of address uh, could be addressed by another methodology other than the one that the applicant suggested, that is by claims and objections. So that I'm saying he did not deviate fundamentally from the directives which were given to him. But having said that, keeping along the lines of morality, very often it's for the lawyer to advise the client. It's not for the lawyer simply to take the client's word, knowing that the client's word are in contradiction with what the law provides for. It is for the lawyer to advise the client. And in the instances, what lawyers do, rather than argue against the fact of the matter, they try to find procedural and other issues that can get the client off. And we have seen that repeatedly in terms of constitutional cases, election petitions, where almost every time a petition has been ruled against, not because anybody proved the substance of the case to be wrong, but because some procedural matter, like the timing of the submission of something, was wrong. And they've used those things to strike down a case which substantively has never been proved otherwise.
Let me stretch you one link further. Is GECOM and organizations like GECOM, are organizations like GECOM the same kind of client of as an individual who has a matter and he or she hires a lawyer and they go to court? Is the individual client the same client as an organization such as GECOM?
No.
There you go.
The individual may be held accountable in the court of morality, and that accountability cannot be exercised in the court of law nor in any court. That individual is beholden to the maker for his behavior. There is nothing in the law that says, if the individual sticks to a particular something that's not true, that he's accountable for that. But I would proffer that an institution like GECOM and if it does not conduct itself in keeping with what the Constitution provides for, then that in regards may be considered to be a dereliction of duty. So the GECOM could raise all sorts of arguments in the court, but one may well question by virtue of its arguments, whether its arguments seeks to ensure that it is carrying out its mandate, or whether its arguments, in fact, flies in the face of its mandate. That matter is still to be finalized and determined in relation to GECOM, because this case has only been heard in the first instance. There's a second and third instance, and what comes out in the third instance, if we don't have another procedural obstacle, will determine whether GECOM was in fact carrying out its mandate or flying in the face of its mandate in acts that I would say would have been acts of collusion with a party that has a different interest.
There you have it there, Vincent. I promise not to keep you too long tonight because I know you have a busy time coming up in the coming hours. But there is an important meeting at the United Nations this coming week, and Ipada G is slated to attend that meeting. Can you bring us up to speed here as to what that meeting is all about?
Indeed, and not only is it Padaji slated to attend, but I in person, on behalf of it, Padaji will be attending, among others. This meeting is referred to as the fourth session of the Permanent Forum for the People of African Descent. It's a part of the machinery for the realization of the International Decade for People of African Descent. In fact, for the realization at this time of the second decade. It's a forum where the people of African descent are assembling to raise issues in relation to what the decade seeks to achieve, to monitor what is being done by the various states in pursuit of what the decade seeks to achieve, and to proffer solutions to issues that confront the people of African descent, as is intended by the decade. So it's really a kind of a review mechanism. It's a monitoring mechanism. It's a mechanism where ideas are brought to the table in terms of a resolution of the issues. This year, and this fourth session is focusing on the question of reparations. And may I emphasize that when we talk about reparations, we're not merely talking about the question of the former colonizers given compensation. We're talking about repairs to the damage done to institutions in the legal system and ultimately to the people of African descent. This forum is therefore being convened with reparations being its focus, with 4 sub-teams. One sub-team will specifically be addressing the question of Haiti. Another sub-team will be addressing the question of reparations. Another sub-team will be addressing the question of AI and its impact on this whole question of the status of the people of African descent. And another sub-team will be addressing the question of human rights with some specific attention to women and gender, all within the context of recognition, justice, and development for the people of African descent. I sense we have one of those problems. I hope that my presentation was being heard.
It's me. I take myself off the screen to give you the full floor. I was saying that we will be following that meeting next week and be speaking to yourself and some of the attendees. I want to end, Vincent, where we started. Your thesis on trauma and as it relates to the condition of African Guyanese and African people, period, those who have experienced the long period of enslavement as a long trail in scholarship, in the scholarship of the African diaspora. And, you know, and some people are saying it here tonight. For you to go to talk to Freddie Kissoon and Leonard Craig and James Bond, I don't know about Ravi Dev, who I don't even think understand a proper definition of race or has read anything on the scholarship of trauma and African Guyanese. We go back to the seminal thesis of our own Orlando Patterson, Jamaican Caribbean, who advanced the thesis of social death. And out of that thesis of social death, the whole notion of the trauma that Black people have had to undergo, and that since the end of slavery, that the communities have not been given the space to work out that trauma. Our own AUC Guyana wrote a small booklet with his wife, Chaiko, that's called The Scars of Bondage. And that is what Vincent was trying to explain. And the gentlemen who have no idea of what they're talking about, they have not studied the issue of race. They have not studied the issue of enslavement. And they want to talk on something that they are completely ignorant about. And so when faced with the academic and intellectual propositions of Vincent Alexander, they call it mumbo jumbo. They do not even know what the basic definition of race is. And I don't say that to put them down. I'm just saying that to say that people who ignore race, people who try not to talk about race, people who try to explain race, have absolutely no time to go and study race. They don't. And I say that as someone who has spent years and decades studying race as an academic and as a scholar. I studied at Howard University. I was exposed there to the literature on race, and the literature on race as they have to do with the condition of Black people all over the world. And these people who are talking about race, they have not even read a book. I exempt Ravi Dev, because Ravi Dev has read on race, and he has read on African Guyanese. He misuses what he reads, he manipulates what he reads, but at least he knows the definition of race, and he knows about race. Freddie Kissoon does not. He doesn't have to. I don't think Brother James Bond has. He doesn't have to. Leonard Craig doesn't know the first thing about race. You ask those gentlemen, give me a single definition of race, and they wouldn't be able to tell you anything intelligent. So when they hear the thesis of trauma, they're not able to relate to it. The notion of social debt, in which Orlando Patterson, a Jamaican who taught at Harvard, and Orlando Patterson argues that what slavery did was to kill African people socially. Hence the notion of social death. And out of that thesis of social death come all these notions of the trauma, and that African people have not been given the space and the time to work it through. And part of what the decade and the second decade is intended to do is to give African people some space to work through the post-slavery trauma. Good evening to my brother Lawrence Houston, who himself is an academic, a scholar. We as African people, in our native condition, We experience it. We know it. We feel it. That is what Bob Marley means, that every time we hear the crack of a whip, our blood runs cold. We understand that trauma. We understand what it does. We sometimes express that trauma in different ways. We express that trauma sometimes in a denial of our identity, a denial of who we are, a denial of blackness. We sometimes express that trauma in certain fears that we have. If you live in Guyana and you see the way in which the East Indian elites are behaving, that trauma comes to the fore because it's a fear of Guyana being transformed into a modern day plantation. That fear is a real fear for African people. And what we scholars have done is that we have taken that experience, that raw fear, that raw trauma that our people express in various ways. And we have quote unquote refined them, meaning turn them into academic treatises. And Freddie Kissoon has no interest in that. He doesn't have to. He's not the son of an enslaved person. Leonard Craig has no interest in that. Brother James Bond has no interest in that. And I'm not saying this to put the brothers down. I'm just saying that they have no interest. They have reduced African people to wanting material things. That if you give African people material things, you solve their problems. They've reduced us to that. Not realizing that as enslaved people, we were reduced to material things. We were reduced to chattel. And now they are telling us that it is chattel we want. And that if you give us some money and you give us some things, that's what Jack Dio and the PPP and Freddie and Leonard Craig and James Bond, that's what they're into. And they don't know that what they're doing is insulting the dignity of African people, largely because they have not studied what they're talking about. And I don't blame them. They don't have to. They don't have to. So when they talk about those of us who speak for African, I speak for, African people never elected me to speak for them. But I speak for Africans as an academic, as a scholar, who has had the good fortune of reading books and studying things about African people, to give it back to them as nourishment. In that sense, I speak for African people. Something as basic as that, they do not understand. As CLR James asks about cricket, what do they know who only cricket knows? I ask here tonight, paraphrasing CLR James, what do they know of African people who only African people know? This business of wanting to speak on issues that they know nothing about. The very fact that they think black people's story is going to be solved by material things. Oh, young black people, all they want is to get rich, and we have rich black people all over the world. One of the first rich men in Virginia before the United States was a man named Anthony Johnson. One of the richest men in early Virginia. But when slavery came into effect, his wealth was taken away from him, because what slavery and racism meant was that an African should not own wealth. So what are they telling us about material things? This is what Dr. Jeffrey was arguing here on Tuesday. Yes, our people need material things. I'm not saying that we don't need material things. Like every other human being, we are economic beings partly. We wake up and we prepare ourselves to go and sell our labor, to get money, to repair ourselves for the next day. And so we are partly economic beings. But we are economic beings within the context of beings who were once chattel. And if you don't understand that basic thing about Africans, you don't understand anything about us. And so Vincent is right. You can't go there and be talking to people who are totally ignorant about what you're talking about, who have no interest in what you're talking about. Frantz Fanon talked about black skins, white masks. And in this instance in Guyana, we have some people in black skins and brown masks. Some of those brothers have no interest in their blackness. Absolutely none. And I do not blame them. They're individualists. And so are all of us. I'm an individualist because I'm, among other things, an individual. But I am an individual that identifies with my larger collective. And that is what separates me from a Leno Craig. He's an individual who does not identify spiritually, intellectually, culturally with one of his identities. That is his African identity. He may identify with his Guyanese identity. He may identify with his religious identity. But he has chosen not to identify with his African identity. I do not hold it against him. But what I am saying to these brothers is that those of us who have taken on the Herculean task of identifying not just with the past, but identifying with the past of our people so that we can lay a future for our people. Leave us severely alone. Leave us severely alone. They are Indian people. Ravi Dev identifies with his Indianness. God bless him. He's doing the right thing. And that is why I always thought I could do business with him. But he has decided now to use that identification in a political manner that is injurious to African, and I have to part company with him. And so Vincent Alexander is right. And you all are right who are saying that Vincent has no business going there to talk to those people about a subject matter that they don't know anything about or have no interest in. I look at them write about African and black people, and I said, listen to these people. They have reduced us to people who you can throw some material things at, and that will solve our problem. Of course we need material things. I have to repeat that. Of course we need material things. We are partly economic beings. They curse us and say when the coalition was in power, it did nothing for black people. They are partly correct, not fully correct. The coalition did things that black people benefited from. But they are correct in that the coalition did not do very many things that were directed at the black problem. But here is the thing. If the coalition had done that, they would have called the coalition black racist. So you're between a rock and a hard place. If you're a black-led government and you pursue policies that have to do with repairing the black condition, you're called racist. If you don't do anything that deals with the black problem, they tell you you didn't look after your own people. You're between a rock and a hard place. And that is why I have decided to hell with it. I am going to stand with black people fully and squarely and take all the costs. And I hope that when we take government and people like myself implore on that government to do what they said the coalition didn't do, that is to deal directly with the African problem. I hope they don't call the government a racist government. I hope they don't. I know they would, because they talk with forked tongues. But I am taking up their challenge. And that any government that I'm associated with will have to address frontally the particular structural and historical problem of the African. That is not the only thing it will do, or it should do. It has to govern a country of all peoples. But it has a particular problem. Just as the Amerindians have a particular problem, I heard Jagdio boasting today that when the PPP took office, 6% of the land was owned by Amerindians. Today, Amerindians have 20-something% of the land or more. I have no quarrel with that. I congratulate the PPP for that. I hope that when a government that we are part of do the same thing for African people, that is to look after their patrimony in Guyana, as the PPP has looked after the patrimony of East Indians and Amerindians. I hope they do not call us racist. I know they would. So I'm hoping against hope, but I'm sounding warning to them. This confounded nonsense has to be stopped, where people think that they can kick black people around like football. When they talk about crossover vote, they don't talk about Indians crossing over to the PNC. They always talk about blacks crossing over to the PPP. When they talk about all these liberal this and liberal that, it is never about the other races. It's always about Africans. Because they think that Africans are easily kicked around. And I do agree that some of us, a tiny minority of us, allow ourselves to be kicked around like footballs. And so they feel that they can take liberty with us. But I have news for them. I have news for them. So long as there is breath in my life, I am going to be, even if I am the lone voice, I am going to clip your foot from kicking my people as a football. I'm going to break your foot. You're not going to use your foot to kick my people around like a football. I'll break your legs. That is my message tonight. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give us the victory again and again.